So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be in the world. Thank you very much for joining us. Welcome to the latest in our series of FIPP Insider webinars. So far, we've had almost 700 people join one of these webinars, and I'm delighted to say that we've got another fantastic turnout today with around 300 people registered. Thank you very much for your support. It really means a lot to us. The FIPP Global Digital Subscription Snapshot is published quarterly in partnership with our friends at CeleraOne. It has become the definitive survey of the latest data and information from the digital subscriptions marketplace, and as well as the 100 or so publishing brands we feature, recent updates have seen us add data for VOD and music streaming services, and you'll see a little bit more about that later on today. We're delighted today to be able to present the latest updates to this data. And in the first half of today's session, I'll be bringing you the latest figures from the biggest players in the market, as well as providing you with an overview of the types of paywall out there and some hints and tips on how to introduce one. We'll then be hearing from our guests. We are delighted to have representatives with us from CeleraOne and from Axel Springer. They'll be giving us their real-world experiences of digital subscriptions in a crisis. Now, to make the most out of today's session, I recommend that you download a copy of the report if you haven't already done so. It's free, and a link should be appearing in the chat box right now. And I'll show you where the chat box is in a minute. But before I introduce our guests, let me just run through a few quick housekeeping items. Today's session is partly a presentation and partly a Q&A, and we're very keen to hear from as many of you as possible. If you look in your webinar controls at the bottom of your screen, you'll find the Q&A button. Go in there and you can submit your questions, and you can also upvote other delegates' questions and make comments on them. As I mentioned earlier, there is also a chat box, which you can also find at the bottom of your screen. You can access it through the webinar controls, and you can use this to chat either privately with myself and with the speaker, or you can broadcast more widely to the other attendees. We'll be keeping an eye on that throughout the event. Now, I recommend you keep it open because the FIPP team will be posting comments and useful links throughout the event, including the link now to download the report. Now, these events and the work that FIPP does to share knowledge across the industry would not be possible without the support of our corporate partners. PressReader are now one of the world's largest digital content distribution businesses and have been significant supporters of FIPP and of the industry more widely for many years. UPM is the world's leading biofor company, constantly innovating in the field of forestry products. Many of our magazine members literally wouldn't exist without them. And today's session spotlights another of our key corporate partners, CeleraOne. They are the #1 paywall and single sign-on solution for publishers, and you'll be hearing more about their contribution to the success of their clients later in this webinar. Many of their clients are featured in the data we'll be showing today. We'd like to thank them and our other partners for their support. We would not be able to produce this valuable insight without them. I'd also like to thank FIPP's members for the support you give to the organization. In July, we will be putting most of our content behind a members-only wall on our website. So for those of you that are not members, if you want to continue making use of the knowledge and insight that we provide, we would encourage you to join. Membership starts from as little as £50 per month. Please contact me on james@fipp.com for more details on how to do that. Before we start, just a word about FIPP's current position. We rely on the support of the industry to enable us to carry out our work. Our two leading annual conferences, the Digital Innovators Summit and the FIPP World Media Congress, provide the bulk of FIPP's revenue. There is no certainty to what extent we can count on income from these events in the immediate term. To continue our work on behalf of the industry, such as this new FIPP Insider webinar series, we have decided to create a GoFundMe page, which is an initiative allowing you to contribute to support our work for the industry as you see fit. The link should be appearing now in the chat box, and if you're able to make a donation, we recommend £25. That would go a long way towards covering the cost of these webinars and allow us to continue to bring you the knowledge and network you need to continue to grow your business. As a not-for-profit, we do not pay dividends. All income, including the GoFundMe donations, is invested back into the activities of benefit to the industry as a whole. Tomorrow, you'll all get a post-event email with a link to the slides, a link to download the report, and details of our forthcoming webinars, including links to sign up for those. The next one is on May the 14th and is a fantastic companion webinar to this one. Our host, Martha Stone, will be talking us through the strategies you need to grow your subscription revenue. She'll be discussing pricing strategies, data-driven acquisition, and more with her guests from Mather Economics and the Atlantic. Details of all these are on the website, fipp.com, be in the post-event emails as well. We look forward to seeing you there. Right, that's enough from me on housekeeping. Before I begin the first part of today's session, it's time for me to introduce today's guests. I'm delighted to be joined first by Jörg Walterscheid. He's the co-MD of CeleraOne and has a long history of management positions in consultancy and digital businesses. And my second guest today is Tobias Henning. He's the General Manager Premium for Build Plus and Welt Plus at Axel Springer, responsible among many other things for the digital subscriptions business around both of these iconic German brands. So please join me in giving a warm welcome to them both. So we're going to go straight into the first part now, which is a look at the data from the first quarter report. And I'm going to share with you the presentation that we've produced on this. So the report is produced quarterly by FIPP with the support of CeleraOne. You can download it from the website. The link is in the chat now, but here is some key data for you. I'm going to talk you through some very brief extracts. I want to start with some information about the methodology. We take our data from whatever publicly available sources we can find. Or I should have said, by the way, that the slides will be linked to in the post-event email, so you don't need to take pictures or anything at the moment. You'll get a copy afterwards. We take data from publicly available sources, but it's important to note that there isn't yet any consistent standard on reporting in this area. For example, we don't know whether the numbers being reported include subscribers on free trials. We don't know how people treat subscribers who join and leave within reporting periods. We don't know how publishers treat digital and print subscription bundles. There's also no link at the moment to readership. In other words, we don't know how many are active subscribers versus passive subscribers. And the pricing measurement is also very difficult, as this is usually dynamic and it varies by user and varies according to your user experience and your user history. So that's a little bit of a warning about the data, but nevertheless, there are some things that we can pull out of that, some trends that we can pull out of it. But before I do that, a few common complaints. We rely partly on submissions by publishers to keep this report updated. So if you're not in the report, and you should be, or if your numbers are wrong, please do come and tell us. We really do want to hear from you. We get quite a high number of responses when we put this call out for people to come and contribute. So if you're wavering and you're thinking about whether or not to contact us, please do. You can get hold of us very easily. I'm james@fipp.com, and you can give us the latest data or tell us to correct the figure that we have in there. So let me start with just a very brief extract from our how-to report on paywalls from last year. This is going to be reissued shortly. The current version is still available on the website. This is a reminder that there are multiple types of paywall. So when we're talking about paywall, there isn't just one size fits all. This report that we've got here captures data from all of them. Hard paywalls, metered paywalls, freemium, the hybrid model, dynamic, the donation or membership model, and the premium paywall. Increasingly, though, the best practice seems to be the dynamic paywall, which changes the experience and the price based on user behavior. But we're going to hear a little bit more about that from CeleraOne, from our guest from CeleraOne later on. So that's just a very quick overview of the types of paywall that we have out there. So let's start looking at the top 10 by volume in the latest report. Now, I've crossed out the figure from the New York Times because literally in the last 48 hours, we've had the latest quarterly earnings from the New York Times that have updated their numbers. They've been the leader in this space since we started the report. This quarter is no exception. They're now reporting for the first time over 5 million digital subscribers. That's across both their news and other digital subscription products. And if you look at the yield in their accounts over the past year, that comes to about $2.20 per subscriber. So clearly far out in front of the rest of the pack in terms of the number of subscribers and attracting a reasonable yield for each one of those. We're going to look at in a little bit more detail at the New York Times later on, so I'm not going to dwell on that too much. Some way behind New York Times is the Dow Jones Group, but nevertheless they are still the largest, the second largest player in the market. It has a lower subscriber number, but note that they're primarily a B2B service, so they can charge a premium in terms of the price that they charge subscribers, and the revenues generated are much higher. Third on the list is a brand that you may not have come across before, The Informer. The Informer is a fascinating model. It's an online paid digital magazine for the GameStop retail chain in the US. So it counts because it's a paid product, and it is a magazine product, unlike some of the other services on here, which are more website products. And it has this incredibly high number of digital subscribers, 2.1 million at the last count, paying $15 per year, which for a retail chain is a fantastic achievement. After that, the Wall Street Journal, another title with primarily business-focused audience, hence the higher price. And Wall Street Journal numbers are included in the Dow Jones, not included in the Dow Jones group numbers necessarily. It's a separate number. We don't have any recent updates from the Washington Post. We know that they had around 1.5 million digital subscribers last year. We were able to extrapolate their growth based on the most recent sets of numbers that they've given us, and we think that they have roughly around 2 million subscribers now. Then there is Schibsted, an example of the success that we're seeing with digital subscriptions in Scandinavia. All of the major groups in the Scandinavian region, Schibsted, Aller, Bonnier, Amedia, they all have large volumes of digital subscriptions. And we think in Norway, for example, we estimate that something like 25% of the adult population holds a digital news subscription, which is quite a remarkable number. The FT continues to perform strongly, another business-focused title with a premium price, as is Nikkei, its owner, immediately behind it with their Japanese business-to-business service. The US newspaper group Gannett has over 600,000 subscribers now, and at the bottom of the top 10 is The Athletic, which is the sports-focused site with a major presence in the US and now also in the UK, although we expect their growth has slowed a bit in light of the recent crisis. Now, we should also note that a lot of these numbers, most of these numbers, don't show us the impact yet of the COVID-19 coronavirus crisis. We don't see any large bumps in numbers because the reporting periods have yet to come to an end. The only one where there is a very slight glimmer of that is the New York Times number, and we'll look at that in a little bit more detail. So let's just start by, in terms of the growth profile, looking at the two largest titles, the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal. Now, the New York Times is great for those of us who watch this space because every quarter, regular as clockwork, they publish their data, they publish the volumes and the values of their subscription business, and they are performing very, very strongly. They have had average quarterly growth of more than 7%. Since the period that this graph starts, which is the second quarter of 2017. But what's of interest, and perhaps an early sign of the COVID bump, is that this quarter was the highest growth rate for 3 years. This is the highest quarterly growth rate since Q1 of 2017. So is that an indicator that people were already starting to subscribe in large numbers in the first quarter of the year as a result of the COVID crisis? And if you look at its performance in Q1 of 2020 versus Q1 of 2016, which is not shown on this graph, revenue is up 128%, and the volume of subscribers is up 236%. And in the next edition of the report, we're going to do a little bit more depth on the New York Times numbers in detail. Wall Street Journal is also showing very healthy growth, 4% average growth per quarter in subscriber volumes. Just a word on that number, quarterly growth number. We use quarterly growth because the reporting periods for titles are all different. Everybody releases numbers at different times, referring to different periods. So to average them out, we create an average quarterly compound growth number, which shows between 2 points what the quarter-on-quarter growth was on average for those brands. Here's for the rest of the market. So this includes a whole bunch of other titles below the Wall Street Journal. And there are probably two key takeaways from this slide. The first is that growth is starting to average out at about 2 to 5% per quarter for most titles, particularly these larger ones who've been in the market for a longer time. But also that this is now a global phenomenon. If you look at these titles on here that represent some of the largest titles in the market, they come from not only the US and the UK and Japan and Germany, but also Argentina, Brazil, and France. And in the report, you can find examples from all the Scandinavian countries, Poland, Slovakia, Switzerland, Austria, Australia, Canada, and beyond. So this is now a global phenomenon. You can see there the incredible growth of The Athletic as well. It'll be interesting to see what's happened there as a result of the current crisis. So if we look at the growth profile for titles that have reported a figure this quarter, so this is only titles reporting a figure in Q1 of 2020, you can see a much wider variety of numbers. And I would draw your attention to Tribune Publishing. They own city and local newspapers across the US. They own a bunch of titles that you would have heard of and a bunch that you haven't. They recorded 18% growth since their last update, which was in the second quarter of last year. And we can expect more COVID-related growth from them based on the numbers that or based on the comments that one of their executives made today. Also look at the astonishing performance of La Nación in Argentina. La Nación went very early into the subscriptions market in a market where they were not sure it was going to work, but they've had a tremendous amount of success. They've now got almost 300,000 people subscribing to their titles, and they've grown at 15.5% a quarter every quarter since 2018. Absolutely astonishing performance, and should give you an enormous amount of confidence if you're thinking about going into this space. We also wanted to see if we can spot a correlation between weekly price and volume. Now, price, as I've said before, is fraught with difficulty in terms of measurement, but we thought we would see if there's any correlation there. This scatter chart plots the data for the top 30 titles, excluding the groups, again with New York Times' yield shown from their accounts. We can see that there isn't really much of a correlation. I've put this line in the middle, these two lines in the middle of the graph, to suggest to you that anything to the right of the vertical line would be a mass number title, a large number title. Anything above the horizontal line is a premium title. There isn't really anybody yet who's cracked high price, high volume. Only a few have cracked high volume, very high volume overall, the New York Times and the ones we mentioned earlier. Everybody else is bunched into this left-hand side where they're getting less than 500,000 subscribers with a wide variety of prices. The B2B focused products like Nikkei and the FT are outliers. They're able to charge a premium price and deliver a reasonably high volume, but that's primarily because their audience is primarily corporates and being paid by companies. For Western brands, excluding Nikkei and the FT, for Western news and entertainment brands, we reckon the average pricing is about $3.10 per week. So if you're looking at pricing and pricing strategy, that's more or less the ballpark that you need to be in. So we want to finish by finish the first part of this session by putting the news and publishing market into context. If you look in the report, there is more information in there about VOD and music streaming services, and even the largest player, the New York Times, which is right down the bottom right-hand side of this graph, is tiny in comparison with VOD, where volumes can reach into the many tens of millions. Of course, all of you have heard of Netflix. They've got almost 200 million subscribers, but there are a host of players across Asia with very large subscriber numbers in the digital video space. You can see some examples there, including Tencent Video and Youku. And if we look at music, then Spotify with 124 million and Apple Music with 60 million subscribers are also much larger than New York Times. But I also want to highlight in this report, a running theme in these reports recently, is that there are no large entertainment or special interest brands in our list. There's not an L or a Men's Health there yet. That feels like a big gap. We're still waiting for evidence of the market and consumers' ability to bear a subscription price for that kind of content, lifestyle content, entertainment content. Condé Nast have been doing a lot of work in this area. They've yet to release any results, but that will be a really good indicator when they do. So finally, here are our 6 steps for implementing a paywall. This again is taken from the how-to report. We'll hear more on this from our guests in a minute, but very briefly, the value proposition is key, a large part of which has to be the quality and uniqueness of your content. If you're not producing high quality, unique content, then you're not going to be able to charge for it. You've got to be data driven in managing your customers. You've got to get the right technology and get everyone in the business working towards the same goal. And you've got to make the user experience second to none. Finally, you've got to figure out, if you're a print legacy brand, how you bring your print audience with you. So that's just an overview, very quick overview of some of the key lessons that we've got from that report. As I said earlier, if you download the report, you'll be able to do your own analysis and look in a little bit more detail at all of the things that we're talking about in there. So I'm just going to stop the screen sharing now, and I'm going to invite our guests to join us. Tobias York, welcome. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to the discussion.
So I'm going to start with you, Tobias. We've seen the overall performance of Axel Springer as a group in some of the slides that I presented there. What can you tell us about the success of your individual titles?
So let me just give a short overview about Build Plus and Welt Plus. So Build Plus is the bigger brand. Build is a boulevard desk, a newspaper or digital news site focusing on topics like, of course, news, but also crime, sports, a lot of Bundesliga, celebrities, and so on. And you only showed the combined figures, but I can tell you we have now 467,000 subscribers for Build Plus, and we are extremely happy with that, with a yearly growth of 10%. So Build Plus, which is the Boulevard style subscription, is priced at €8, and that also makes us happy because we increased the price in the last, actually at the end of 2018, from €5 in the to €8, and we also changed the introductory price. Instead of charging 99 cents for the first month, we increased that to €4 for the first month.
Wow.
And then giving a discount for an entire year, which makes €4 the standard price for the first year, and then going up to the €8 price. And we are extremely happy with the price increase, extremely happy with the new introductory price now being applied for a year, because the growth is still there. So growing 10% is pretty much the same growth rate which we had the years before.
Yeah.
But instead, we are the average revenue per user went up, and also the customer lifetime went up. So people, subscribers now are staying much longer because they don't have to rush to test it within a month. They now have a year where they get a discount. So they stay much longer. So that was within the last 12 months for us, I would say, the most important development, and also the biggest success. Constant growth with a different price model, a higher price. And still, I mean, constant growth is something what we wouldn't take for granted. But still we see it. We started in 2013, and even now we are still seeing really, really good growth rates. And that even is better at Welt Plus. So Welt is Axel Springer's other big brand in Germany. Welt is more focusing on politics, on business, economy topics, but also on commentaries, on opinions. And Welt Plus, the subscription, the digital subscription of Welt it has a higher price. So the standard product is €10, but there is also a premium product which is €20 per month. And at Welt Plus, we have been seeing in the last 12 months amazing growth rates. So we grew 21% in the last 12 months.
Wow.
Makes us really, really happy. And so at Welt Plus, we are now at around 116 subscribers in March. And so that is the figure which is included in your report, and 116,000 subscribers. And I can tell you that during the last 4 to 6 weeks, we even saw much more accelerated growth. And with Welt Plus, of course, the much stronger growth rate is the biggest development, or the biggest success, which we saw in the last 12 months. Also, the good price of €10 makes us, of course, it makes that a really valuable revenue stream. And with that, we hope we can grow in the next months or in the for the next upcoming 12 months at this sustainable rate further.
That's
So that's
fantastic.
pretty much where we are staying now.
So that's very encouraging. So you've got very high levels of growth, even when you're putting the price up, and then
Yeah.
higher levels of growth as a result of the flooding of users to the platform during the current crisis. There's a lot of encouragement there.
Yes, most definitely. So in the last couple of weeks during the COVID crisis, we are seeing really strong daily sales figures, which are sometimes 3 times or 4 times the figures we saw before. So that is something what we are seeing at the moment. But we also see that this bump is already, let's say, not that strong anymore. So we are still seeing at the moment extremely above the average sales figures, but I would say that the peak was a couple of weeks ago already.
Okay, fantastic. So that's a really good, encouraging story from an individual publisher. York, I mean, CeleraOne must have an overview because you power a great number of publishers' experiences, paywall experiences. You must have an overview of the overall performance of the market. What are the key trends that you guys are seeing?
Probably two or three main observations we clearly see or have in our discussions. Is the one is, of course, the print business is suffering heavily, not only in terms of sold copies, as well as in terms of advertisement revenue. So this is clear, as we can imagine in COVID-19 times. And then what Tobias just said, we can see as well throughout all the publishers I talked to or under contract, is that we have high growth rates in digital. So daily growth rates by 100%, doubling the figures. The page impressions are doubling. We see that we have an increase in subscriptions. We get reported that subscriptions have a very nice increase. So on these terms, on page impressions and subscriptions, we see a clear, very nice, promising trend in the COVID-19 times. However, also here we can say that the advertisement revenues also in digital, let's say, are not for all the brands, but for a couple of brands are under pressure. And probably last but not least, what we also had in our talks with all our clients is, and what we can see and feel, and probably it's only a feeling as well, is that it seems so that the larger publishers are experimenting, trying a little bit more during this time to benefit from the crisis. And the smaller or medium-sized publishers are not that offensive in trying to also benefit from the crisis. So there's a little bit what we can see. We see a lot of new formats coming out from the bigger publishers. We see a lot of campaigns running to trying to somehow benefit from the peaks we see there in page impressions and so on. So, but it could also be just a feeling. So these three observations basically I can make.
Okay, fantastic. We'll come back to that question of taking advantage of the crisis or using the crisis as an opportunity to experiment later on. But I just wanted to stay on this question of the changes that we've seen recently. And Tobias, we've spoken about the volume. What about the patterns of usage? Have you noticed anything about those changing, the dwell time, the hours of usage, that kind of stuff? Are you seeing different patterns there?
Yes, for a couple of months or even now 1.5 years, we are seeing an increased interest in video content. In particular, a video content behind the paywall, and that comes also with a higher dwell time. So what we started is investing in producing our own video documentaries, but also licensing video documentaries from other partners. And what we're seeing is that people who watch those videos, they don't just have a longer or a higher dwell time, they also have an increase in their lifetime. And by them, we make those users much stickier to our product. Another pattern of usage was what we see is actually, of course, it's even more getting moving towards mobile, but that is not a surprise. Nonetheless, it's still something what we, as we grew up with still a strong desktop focus, we have to focus every time that everything now, or the most business now, is mobile, being either on the mobile website or being in the apps. And still the iOS and also the Android apps are for us a strong and even growing sales channel. Apart from that, what might be interesting, but that's also regarding the patterns of usage, but this is always highly regional, I would say, so depending on the markets where you are. What we have been seeing in the last couple of months is the payment method, which is now the widest used, is PayPal. So it used to be a totally different picture for the German market, at least. So direct debit and followed by credit card used to be in the beginning the most used payment method, but now we see the overwhelming new subscribers subscribing by using PayPal.
Wow.
Nonetheless, we still have, from our side, it's important that for us also the app stores are an important sales channel. So for them, we still have high conversion rates with iTunes and to a much lower figure, we also use the Google Play Store payment. But the interesting thing, what we discovered is that people in Germany are now much more using PayPal.
Do we think there's any particular reason for that? Is the PayPal user journey or user experience just easier for people?
Yeah, it's all, I mean, that's also something what we always have to keep in mind, what is so important, that is a smooth payment flow, or an easy and smooth access to the content people would like to read. And for that, the UX of the payment message is crucial. And I think that PayPal is doing a good job, because for paying you only need your mail address and your password, whereas for credit card you have to put in the credit card number. And for direct debit now in Germany, it's very not user friendly, because you have to use the very long IBAN number. So yeah, it's definitely about the user experience, the smooth payment, or the easiest way for users today to pay is through PayPal.
Fantastic. There's a number of our attendees today, our delegates today, who perhaps don't have a paywall yet. I wanted to ask both of you, and maybe York, you can pick this up first from a technology point of view. I wanted to ask about the user journey for a prospective subscriber. I mean, how do they go from the first visit to a site to becoming a recurring loyal subscriber? What are the kind of key steps along that road?
I mean, it's a little bit different, of course, because all that depends clearly on behavior of the preferences and the behavior of the readers. So that is the reason why we always say it is so important to understand the preferences and the behavior of the reader, to engage with the reader, and then to try to convert him into the subscription. So it is really about understanding preferences, behavior, building segments, and targeting these segments as individually as possible, and that in real time. So it is not about just a simple paywall and just do it very pushy. It is more really to interact and engage with the audience, understand what they want. Sometimes it's preferable to start with a soft first version by using registration walls and not directly the paywall. Then putting up mixtures of all that you can, as you said in the beginning, James, that you play with metered content or premium freemium, that you try all these different logics you already have out there, that you try these on different categories. Like if you come from a Facebook advertisement campaign, you do something differently as you would do for people who comes from a Google Ads campaign, or in the category of sports, you do differently to the category of COVID-19, of course. So it's really about that, starting slowly, not too pushy. And if you set up a paywall, then try to understand what the behavior, the preference of the reader is, and then that you push an offer to the audience which is as individual as it can be, so that you have a direct engagement and interaction, and by that as well kind of trust. So this is what I would say.
And an easy first step for somebody who has nothing at the moment, a registration wall, is that the first place to start, just to capture that data?
Yeah, I would absolutely recommend that, especially now in the times of COVID-19. I mean, making people paying for COVID-19 news might not be the right first step, right? So it could be more wise to ask for registration, and by that you get closer to your readers. You use the peaks, even though if they are softening now, with more growth, more page impression than ever before. So it could be a nice first, let's say, first step into the paid content strategy of your company. Yeah, absolutely.
And Tobias, for a built premium or Welt premium subscriber, what's their journey from first contact to subscription?
I mean, in the end, it's all about the right content, bringing the right content to the user who is willing to pay, and that depends heavily on the user, on what channel he comes from, and so on. So, but I mean, I always say you don't make someone paying who doesn't love and use your brand already. So that's why the most important user group you can target in the beginning is your free users. So instead of, like, say, focusing on social media or focusing on Google or digital advertising, use your own sites. Use your own sites to market the subscriptions. So the average user journey, of course, is somebody is already attracted to your free content, is heavily using it, so is heavily engaged, and then at some point he finds the right piece where he converts into a subscription. So that is the average user journey. But then it's up to us in the marketing, or up to everyone who is not on the journalistic side, to bring this content to the user, then show him the right offer, and by that convince him of getting into a subscription. Once the user is in a subscription, in particular in a trial subscription, it's again up to us to convince him, or to, first of all, to explain the value proposition, to explain what he really gets with his subscription, what channels, what devices he can use, and by that trigger the engagement and bringing the user again and again in contact with the advantages of his subscription, which is foremost the right content. So what we also have to keep in mind is that different subscribers convert through different content, and that is interesting if you want to if you want to target that user and make him more engaged. You have to keep in mind what content he is really interested in, and that is, of course, a data-driven issue. So what we have to work on is to target then even the subscriber with the right content in order to make him a very sustainable and long-lasting subscriber.
I'm just going to take a question from the audience. We've got a number of open questions, and I promise we will answer all of the questions that we've got before the end of today. But a question here from Alvaro Triana, who's from Innovation Consulting in Colombia, and welcome again, Alvaro. He's asking, has the buyer persona purchasing criteria changed with the crisis? And how has this influenced the value proposition and your subscription offers and your campaigns? Tobias, have you, I mean, you talked about the price increase. Have you done anything specifically around the crisis on pricing and offers?
No, we haven't. So that's important. I mean, during the crisis, we are pretty much doing the same what we did before, which is first of all, providing high quality journalism to our users. And I mean, we at Welt Plus and at Build Plus, we have a freemium model. So that means we have a lot of free content, and the best or the most valuable content is behind the paywall. So what and during the crisis, we are doing the same what we used to did before, which is giving all the relevant information which everybody needs to know, and which everybody would also get somewhere else. That is what we give for free. But everything what we have, which gives an added value to the subscriber, which might be exclusive content, which might also be some content which only a user would find in the way we tell it at our site, that we put behind the paywall. And it's even during the crisis, we are a news site which provides excellent journalism, which provides information, the standard information for free, but everything what is exclusive, everything what has an added value, everything what people wouldn't find somewhere else, we put behind the paywall. And with that, we are definitely doing the same as we did beforehand. And we also didn't, I mean, of course, we thought about, and in the beginning, there were some, let's say, I would say some strange discussions. But I mean, in the media business, at all, like, do we have to provide everything for free? Do we have to use this crisis to make more subscriptions and whatsoever? But we decided we will do exactly the same what we used to do beforehand, and we are not putting any special offer out there. We are not putting something in even maybe at a higher price or so. No, we are just doing the same what we used to do before, in order also to increase the trust in the product, the understanding of the product, and still bringing everything in relevant information for free to the customer or to our readers. And I think that way has proven very very successful for us. I mean, there is, if you now during the crisis, for example, you give something for if you put down your paywall, in the end, I mean, what would you get from that? I don't know what people would expect from that. If you put out some discounts or promotions during the crisis to get into the product even more users, that might be an approach, but I would be a little bit afraid that these users are then not so sustainable, so they might go away after the crisis is over, or after there comes in something what I would call the crisis fatigue. So I mean, whatever you do, I mean, it depends on the market, it depends on your users, it depends on the maturity of your product. I mean, it's everybody should try out different measures which fit to their users, but it always has two sides. It can have an upside and a downside. So, and in the end, I mean, after all our discussions we had internally, we decided we are just doing exactly the same what we used to do beforehand. However, I mean, what we have to, however, ourselves have to keep in mind is that we attracted a lot of users during the crisis who are really interested in everything what is related to the Corona crisis. So that also means that even we now have to focus or bring their focus to all our Corona crisis articles to provide enough content which is behind the paywall about the Corona crisis. So we know that there are a lot of people who subscribed because of the Corona content and who are interested in the Corona content, and that is important for us if we think about how do we retain those customers.
I want to turn back to this question of, let's say, using the crisis as an opportunity to experiment, using it to change your business. And actually, we have a good question here as well that I will ask you to answer at the same time. And maybe York, you can start with this one. Why is it that you think that some publishers are experimenting and some aren't? What would be your recommendation? And a kind of related question to this is the big players in this space seem to be newspapers rather than magazines. Why have magazines been so timid in this space so far, do you think?
Okay, a couple of questions in one.
Yeah, definitely.
I think first coming quickly back to this persona question of one of the participants. I think there is somehow a new buying persona out there because they never bought or were interested particularly in digital content. So and there this is what I see where it's absolutely an opportunity, and I totally agree with Tobias. You need to stick to your value proposition and you need to stick to what you did before. So not probably selling something which you can't stick to in the long run. On the other side, I think it's a clear chance now to get these people better to know. Why are they here? Is it only for COVID? Can I now show them our value, and by that a good value proposition, and by that can I retain them? So I think it's an absolutely huge opportunity for all these publishers to try to convince these people not only to stay for COVID-19, so also to stay in a longer run. So really to shift from probably print to digital. Yeah? So this is a big opportunity for, let's say, for the digital industry, which never have been there before. So if these spikes you just mentioned, I would absolutely recommend to everybody to think of what can I do, how can I, despite all these difficulties in COVID-19, how can I somehow benefit from that? What can I do to get these people engaged and retain the engagement? Can I sign them up as the easy step? Could be a nice first step at least. To come closer to these guys. So this is absolutely something. The other question you had is why the magazines, more particular. I can only more or less, that's my feeling. It's a daily news. COVID-19 is something where you want to be informed on a daily basis and not on a weekly or a monthly or bi-weekly base. So it is really about getting daily information about the situation globally, about the effects on my society. And so therefore we see a clear growth in the news portals and not in the magazine portals. Did I answer all of your questions?
Absolutely, thank you. Thank you. I've got a bunch more similar questions, but we'll come back to those later.
Okay.
Let me just go back to Tobias for a minute and ask a more kind of strategic top-level question. Within Axel Springer, how does the digital subscriptions business, the revenue that you get from digital subscriptions, rank in importance versus, let's say, digital advertising? Is it the crucial number that you guys are looking at?
We are still staying on two legs, so it's both is important. So we are not. I mean, we are not saying that advertising revenue is not important anymore, and we are not saying that subscription revenue is the most important thing at the moment. It's actually both, and I think that is also our kind of success story. I mean, there are always discussions. Isn't that a conflict? Isn't that something which we have to decide? You either focus on the one thing and not on the other thing. No, I mean, in particular, this crisis shows how important it is to have a diversified revenue, to have diversified revenue streams.
Definitely.
And that's why I can tell you we are still focusing on both advertising revenue and subscription revenue. So from a strategic point of view, there is not a ranking like saying something is more important than the other thing. But it's still also, you have to make sure that's that this message is into everybody's mind. So you cannot, that you don't lose the focus. So you must not think the only focus now is subscription business. No, don't forget your advertising business and vice versa. So don't say, okay, advertising is at the moment really doing well, which is probably not true for most publishers right now. So that's why our only focus should be advertising. So it's a combination of both.
Okay, I have a question. I have a couple of questions to finish on for both of you before we go to the questions from the audience, of which there's quite a lot. So I want to make sure that we get through them all. Just a very quick one, which is submitted in advance by email. One of our members has been asking us about the conversion of trial subscriptions to permanent subscriptions. Is there a good benchmark for this? Is there a good benchmark rate that people should be aiming for? York, do you want to pick that up first?
I can do. I mean, we had a couple of talks with our clients as well on that. Should we implement trial periods in our offering? Does it work good? It's difficult to say because it's really different from publisher to publisher. Sometimes it works good, sometimes it doesn't. But the good thing is you already get a sign up, so you already have him further in your funnel. So if you then, what Tobias said before, if you now understands what he's reading, what is his behavior, what does he like, if you understands more what he wants, the chance to convert him for a longer time is of course far higher than having an anonymous user before. So it is a first entrance because it doesn't cost you a lot. It's just your email address, and probably you have to put some payment data in there, but there won't be charged if you cancel in time. So it is a good, I would say it's an absolutely good start, but it again comes with, it is not over at that stage. You haven't gotten him into your funnel forever. So you have to work with the clients, and that you do normally, we do it with our software, and that's what we provide, is do it intelligently. So be clever, use data, and then develop so it's an audience development, which doesn't stop at this point. But the opportunity and the chance is of course far higher. The propensity to have him on a long run is far higher than before. Yeah.
Tobias, would that be your experience as well?
It's in some way yes, and I can add to that. It depends. It depends on the pricing model what you have. So if your first month is free, then the conversion into the second month, which is the first paid month, will be much lower than if your first month is already paid. Because then people are already have already put in their payment details and are understanding that they are willing to pay. So then your the conversion will be higher. So I can give you a kind of a benchmark. If your first month is free, or if your first month is just a euro or a dollar, and then in the second month it goes up to the full price of, let's say, 7, 8, 9, 10 euro, then you should see a conversion rate of about 60%. So 60% should go into the
full offering,
into the full subscription, into the second month, let's say. However, if you are charging the same price in the first month as in the second month, then your conversion rate should be around 80%, I would say.
Right.
So that is even the figures which we have as our goals, or which we see.
Fantastic. Good benchmark for everybody to use. Okay, I've got a question here from the audience, and also one of the questions that was submitted in advance, which are the same thing, and I'm sure it's on many people's minds. If you've got a print title, or in this case, a free print title, and you're forced by the crisis now to look at the digital subscription model, and you want to transition to being a paywall product online, what advice would you give to brands that may be starting on that journey? And there's quite a few of them, I think, in this webinar who are starting on that journey. So let me start with York, and then I'll come to Tobias. What would be your kind of advice for somebody who's just thinking about moving to that model?
Overall, I would clearly say that's the time couldn't be better. Yeah, even though we have a crisis, I mean, the demand of digital content is huge. So it is the right time to do so. Important is do it soft and wisely and not too pushy. Yeah, so it's very difficult. You have to, as I said before, you have to develop your audience and to make them understand that content has a value. And of course, if you want to consume content, you need to pay for it. But don't push too much, especially in the beginning. Play with different models. So there are all models out there. We of course offer as well all different offers. That means metered content, freemium, premium. So you have all these possibilities to do hybrids even out there. What could I say more? Paid content is more than, and I said it now I think two or three times, it's more than just a simple paywall. Paywall is just it's nearly a commodity. It's more about the intelligent, dynamic way of using a gate and developing the audience towards a subscription by showing good value propositions, understanding the readers, and then asking for payment by a subscription, for instance. So it's very important to take for all these publishers the perspective, like all the marketeers does, take a perspective of in marketing you have funnel strategies, and I think it's basically the same in selling content. You have an awareness period, you have an intent period, and you have a conversion period. And this is important to take into consideration when you're building your funnel to convert the peoples in digital. And get started now. Get started. Try.
And of course, they should come and talk to you guys as well to learn how to do that and get
sure.
the right
Absolutely.
Go to the CeleraOne website for more information. Tobias, what would be your advice for somebody who's just starting on this journey?
Yeah, I mean, get started is a good point. So don't discuss too much. Don't look for too many arguments which are in favor or against the paywall. Just start, and don't be too over engineering. Just start with a easy payment or easy paywall solution, and then try and learn from that. So that's the most important thing. Just start. You have in the digital world, it's rather easy compared to the print business to change things, to change prices, to change the model, and so on. So just start is a good advice I can give, because I know that a lot of in particular smaller businesses are still discussing if the paywall is the right way to go, or if or what kind of paywall is the right way to go. It doesn't matter. Just start and learn from there. And the other advice I can give is it's all about content. So keep in mind that you don't just, it's not enough to focus on the technology question or on the marketing question. You have to keep in mind that you are selling content. So it's tremendously important to invest in that content and to provide great content, so great digital content. It's not enough that you just take anything from your print enterprise or from the print magazine or newspaper and then put it online, put a paywall on top of it and then hope for the best. That's not enough. You have to provide great content for a digital audience. And that is the most important thing where you have to focus on first. Great digital content. And the next then is an easy paywall solution. And then just start and try and learn and be open for the successes you will see, but also learn from the not so successful things what you will see.
Fantastic, great advice. We're running out of time, so we're just going to take 2 questions from the audience before we close because we are over the hour. So do hang on, please, attendees. Firstly, for another question from Alvaro, do we have more Generation and Z millennials feeding the subscription population, or is it basically Gen X shifting from print to digital due to the crisis? What are you guys seeing on that collectively?
That's a very good question. So we are not. I don't think that we are seeing anyone shifting from print to digital anymore, to be honest, because I would say the digitization in this point of view is over. So someone after 25 years of the internet who is still reading print will still read print. I'm pretty much sure. So that's why we are not convincing someone to shift from print to paid digital. No, we are convincing our free digital users to get into a paid subscription. And we have to convince much more our and younger audience. So call it Generation Z or whatever. And that's something what I think everybody has to work on, because what we see is that the younger people are much more willing to pay for a digital subscription than older generations, because the younger generations, they grew up already with Apple Music, Spotify, with Netflix. So they learned that they have to pay for great content on digital devices. However, I mean, if it comes to the subscription, the new subscription, we see that let's say it's quite a challenge to attract that younger audience. So, but that is a question, I think, about content. So maybe we have to provide the better content, or a content which is more suitable or more attractive to younger audiences. But to sum up that question, we have to focus on all different age groups. So we have to provide content for the 60-year-old reader who might have used a newspaper a couple of years ago, but is now a very sustainable and happy digital user. But we also have to provide great content to users who are maybe 20 years old and don't even know what print or what a print newspaper is or was. So you cannot just focus on one. You have to provide content for all age and interest groups.
Probably just quickly to build on that, on the experience I made over the past years, and I can absolutely support what Tobias said. The value proposition is absolutely. So what is your USP? And if you want to attract younger generations, you can't just put print into an app, or selling just an e-paper and hoping for that brings me the money I earned 20 years ago in print. So it's really about rethinking what is digital content and what does it mean, and how do the audience of today consume already on all these other platforms, Facebook, etc., how they consume there, and what can I learn from that and put it into my content offering. So this we absolutely see, and I saw also in my past years that typical traditional print publishers struggle with rethinking a little bit, what can I offer in digital? And if you are not open for rethinking that, it is difficult to really get subscribers or people they are willing to pay for digital news, because if you don't stick to that, and the advantages of digital has to be clear and show your USP and what digital means, then it works. Absolutely.
Fantastic. Let's just take one last question, which is an internationally focused question for our international audience. Localized pricing, localized payment methods, and shorter subscription cycles are something most of the international video and music streaming services use, so Netflix and Spotify, but not so much for publishers with an international audience. Why do you think that is? That's a question from Matthias Livak. Thank you very much for that. York, do you want to take that one first? Why do you think that is?
Actually, if I quickly screen our portfolio today, I think we have publishers, they do different pricings for different regions. So they sell their newspaper in Switzerland and Germany and have different pricings there. I think I don't know, probably Tobias can answer that better than I can, but the technology is clearly there, and you can localize that, you can push that, you can use geo-targeting to push the different content. So everything is actually ready to do so. Probably it's more a strategic question. I don't know, probably Tobias can answer that a bit better.
I mean, I'm not sure if I would agree with the question, because I think that New York Times and Wall Street Journal, Financial Times, they all have monthly subscriptions. They all have very localized pricing. So I'm not sure if I'm understanding the question right. I mean, I think that a lot of print businesses, or a lot of news sites who had print businesses, still have the print mindset if it comes to pricing. So, and that's why, I mean, even in Germany or in France or in other European markets, you see extremely high monthly prices because they just apply the print price to digital, and then they learn from there that this might not be such a good idea because it doesn't attract high volumes. I mean, what the question really says is that we have to compare ourselves, or the benchmark might be Netflix, might be Spotify and Apple Music and so on, and they provide monthly subscriptions for around, let's say, $10 per month, and they have a little bit different pricing for different markets. So what is definitely right is that they are setting obviously the benchmark for digital content pricing.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, thank you very much, gentlemen. We've run out of time. We've gone 10 minutes over our slot. I would love to have answered all the questions, but we've got so many that had we done that, we'd have been here for another hour. So we'll try to answer some of those in the accompanying article, which you can see on FIPP.com. But for the meantime, thank you very much, York, and thank you, Tobias, for your time. Very, very useful. If you want to learn more about CeleraOne and the products and services that they offer, you can go to the CeleraOne website, or of course you can contact York directly. Please also do have a look at Build Plus and Veld Plus, and you can then experience it for yourselves and see a little bit about real world experience from some of the stuff that Tobias was talking about. That's about it from us today. The recording of this webinar will be on our YouTube channel, which you can see at youtube.com/FIPPworld. There will also be a link to it and to the slides in the follow-up email, which you'll get tomorrow. A reminder that our next webinar is next week at the same time. So we're on May the 14th, 2 o'clock UK time, with The Atlantic and Mather Economics and Martha Williams hosting a session on price strategies for digital subscriptions. So a follow-up webinar to this one. You can follow us on Twitter @FIPPworld, and I am @FIPPCEO if you want to get the latest information. And of course, do go to FIPP.com and subscribe to our newsletter. That's about it for today's session. Thank you very much for joining. We'll see you all again next week. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.